Hi everyone, it's Chris here with a pre-recorded briefing on assessment number 2 in HRM 560, and I recorded this so that you've got one recording that you can go back to maybe a couple of times just to check that you understand what this assessment is about and what you have to do. As you know, in class I do cover things relating to the assessment pretty much every week. And I have gone through the assessment task a couple of times, but I know that some people are still kind of struggling a bit with what exactly this is all about. So I'm recording this just as another way to convey that information for you on what you need to do in assessment number 2. Okay, so let's start with the basics. This is due on the 11th of May at 11:59 through Turnitin. And it's your biggest assessment in the subject with 45 marks, so important to get through this. And you have a good word count, 3,000 words, plus or minus 10%. I don't think you'll need that, but anyway, you've got a little bit extra if you need it. And for this assessment, you can work in groups or on your own. Now, several people have already, well, most people have already joined a group, and we looked at that in one of the classes, just when we started to do the online. I showed the list of names, and I'll put that up also on the Interact site in the resources folder. And you must use 10 sources for this assessment, and those 10 sources need to be within the last 10 years. Well, here's a diagram that gives you an overview of the report and what you need to do. So the first thing you need to do is to identify a real organization. Now, as you know, you can do that yourself if you like as a group, or you can use Study Center as your organization. Second thing, you need to identify a strategic business issue or a problem. For example, it might be customer service, or it might be attracting customers, or it might be supporting students when they come from another country to study at Study Center. These are examples of a strategic business issue or problem, and we say strategic because it needs to relate to the performance of the business, the survival of the business, the viability of the business. So it's not like, how do I get more toilet rolls in the shop every morning? That's more of an operational issue. Strategic issue is like, how do we make sure that we increase our market? How do we make sure we serve our customers well so we can grow the customer base? These relate to the strategy, to the performance, to the survival of the organization. Number 3, step 3 in this report. From that strategic issue, you need to identify 3 possible training needs. And once you do that, you then need to select one of those training needs for the rest of the assignment. So 3 training needs relating to the business issue. So for example, if it's attracting customers, what is 3 possible training needs that you might identify to help the business to attract more customers? Now remember that we have done training needs, I think, in week 3, and there are 3 steps to identifying training needs, and you would use those steps in this third part of identifying the 3 training needs, and then you select one of those needs for the rest of the assignment. The next step is to develop a training program for the selected training need. And the good news is that there is a format that you can use, which is on page 227 of the textbook. In fact, page 227 and 228 would be good to look at for that training program. And of course, I'll be going through this in class as well in the weeks to come. The next step is to explain the learning theory that you have used to develop the training program. Now, at the point that I'm making this recording, the learning theory we've covered in class is adult learning. And so that's one example, and then in the following class I'll be looking at other learning theories that you can use. But the point with this step is that you need to justify how you have used learning theory to develop your training program. And then the last thing in this report is how to evaluate the success. And we'll be going through this in class. And if you look at chapter 6 of the textbook, you'll see that there is quite a few options that you have for how to evaluate the success of a program. A key thing is that it depends a lot on the learning objectives or the learning outcomes that you've got for your training program as to how you evaluate it. Now I'm going through an example of how you might do this assessment using the Study Ready program, which, as you know, is one of the 3 projects that you can use for this assignment. So let's look at these steps for the assignment using this example. So step 1, identify a real organization. Well, if you're doing this example, you would provide an overview of Charles Sturt Uni Study Centre, Sydney. What do they do? Where are they located? Maybe how many students? What are the different programs? And that's about it. Just a couple of paragraphs overview of what this organization does. Next thing, in this example, identify a strategic business issue or a problem, and then 3 training needs relating to that business issue. And finally, select one of those training needs. Well, a strategic business issue for a university is attracting and supporting students, especially when they come from overseas. So 3 possible ways of addressing and achieving that business issue are things like language support or socialization or study support, and you can think of other training needs that relate to that business issue. Now remember that in week 3, when we looked at training needs, and that's also a chapter in the textbook, by the way, and a topic in the online topics, you'll be able to go back and see the 3 steps that you use to identify training needs. So in the report, you need to show how you have used those 3 steps to generate the 3 possible ways that the business issue can be supported in terms of training needs. Then you select one of those training needs, and as it happens, Study Ready is the one that you would select if you're using this example. And it's easy to explain how Study Ready is such an important thing to do to support the transition of international students to the Australian environment and to Charles Sturt University environment. The next thing you need to do is to develop a training program for the selected training need. Now, in this example, and with the other examples from the Study Centre projects, we have done some of the work for you already. And that's because the training program, or in this case the Study Ready workshop, is already there. And you have the information on it and the workbook and the data in the resources folder under Projects for Assessment 2. So you don't have to start from nothing, you already have the program. So in this step, if you're using one of these examples from Study Centre, your training program is going to be how you would make adjustments. What changes would you make? What additional things would you provide in the Study Ready workshop to improve that product? And you're using the format on page 227 and 228 of the textbook, primarily 227, but do have a look at 228 as well. So that's an important step. If you're using a different organization, you would have to use the page 227 sample to build the whole training program or the lesson plan. Here, because we already have the training program, we have done some of the work for you, so now you can look at how it could be improved. So the lesson outline and instructor activity and trainee activity that you'll see on page 227 of the textbook, that will focus on changes that you want to suggest for Study Ready. Now, the Study Ready program has some learning outcomes, and these are now provided by Elaine and are included in the folder for the Study Ready program on the Interact site. So in your training program, you're going to be looking at these steps. I've just taken a part of it from page 227 so you can see what it looks like. Optional chapter 7 as well, but certainly chapter 5, and you are building this. And then the next page there's a bit more. This is not the whole thing, there is more, and it's on page 227 of the textbook. So if you're using a different organization to study center, and that's quite okay, you need to build this whole thing. If you're using the study center, the content of your learning plan is changes, enhancements to the Study Ready workshop. Okay, let's move on. The second last step is to explain the learning theory that you have used to develop the training program. So you know about learning theory. We're doing this over 2 weeks, and we've at the time I'm making this recording, we've already done adult learning, and you may want to use that. So the issue you're looking at, or the process you're following, is if I apply adult learning theory, how would I improve, change the Study Ready workshop? That's all. And then you'd start to develop your lesson plan accordingly. Here are some of the other learning theories that we'll be looking at. So you don't have to use adult learning theory. You can use a different one. But the main thing is that the learning theory supports the design of the training program. It kind of shapes the design. So if you're using adult learning theory, the workshop for Study Ready will be different to maybe if you're using goal theories or need theories. So that's the connection that you need to make. The last step is you need to explain how you would evaluate the success of the training program. And we'll be doing this in class, but chapter 6 of the textbook has plenty of material on how to evaluate training. And there's also literature on that. So you're going to describe briefly how you're going to evaluate the changes that you have made to the Study Ready program or the training program you've developed for a different organization. Then the last thing you need to write is a conclusion, followed by a reference list, 10 sources within the last 10 years. And lastly, but not at all least, I've also developed to help you a guide to presenting the report. And this Word document goes section by section through the report format and tells you what you need to cover in each part of the report. That, together with this presentation, is available on the Interact 2 site under the Resources folder, and this presentation and this document on presenting the report will be of great help to you to get a successful result in assessment number 2.